I will introduce the speakers in turn, of course, in due course, but there is an overlying theme to today. Listening to the radio this morning, I noticed they said that the day after it was announced in the UK that people would have to socially isolate, there were more than 2 million downloads of Zoom, which is the platform, of course, which we're using. And certainly, I've only learned to use it in the last couple of weeks, and it's been very successful. So the trend today really is about innovation and connectivity and digital construction. Those are the themes which run through the 4 different talks. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, and maybe we could get his slides up on screen, please, Shannon. Thank you. Good. So while that's being uploaded, let me just say a few words about our first speaker, Diarmuid O'Brien. Diarmuid works in the same institution as I do. He's the Chief Innovation and Enterprise Officer in Trinity College Dublin. And he's currently the lead on Trinity's Technology and Enterprise Campus down in Silicon Docks, which is in essence the topic of his talk this morning. He's formerly Director of the Research and Innovation at Trinity, and his experience as Executive Director of CRAN, which is Trinity's Nanotechnology Research Centre, is very much supplemented by his management roles in 3 different startups in very diverse areas, actually: electrochromic displays, high-powered batteries, and drug discovery. So these are the areas that and the experience that Diarmuid brings to his current role. So without any further ado, can I ask Diarmuid, please, to make his presentation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger, and hopefully everybody can hear me okay. And just to echo what Roger said, which is that it's fantastic that this has been coordinated and organized at these kind of strange times, and really congratulate people for just driving forward. So it's great to have a chance to speak to people. So this is a presentation, as Roger discussed or outlined, which is around the plans for Trinity to create a new campus down at Silicon Docks, Grand Canal Quay, and to use that campus to catalyse the creation of a globally competitive innovation district in the city down there. And I suppose when we started this, So when we started this reflection within Trinity about what could happen in terms of our own challenges, so Trinity, as I think most people will know, has been on the same campus for 400 odd years. And we've begun in the last decade to really reach the zero-sum game where nearly every new building that's been built has involved us knocking down an existing building. And when we began to think about how we could meet our own ambitions for growing our research agenda, I suppose the reality of finding a new space outside of our existing campus was one that we began to think about. And in that context, we also began to think about Dublin as a city. And I think everybody's acutely aware of, over the last decade or so, we've seen the growth of this incredible collection of industry and this collection of talent working in the Grand Canal Quay part of the city. And so many people see there's something like about 80,000 people now working in this part of the city. And in fact, what we've developed here is one of Europe's leading enterprise co-location zones over the last decade. And although we've developed this enterprise co-location zone, I think what's happened as a trend globally is people have moved away just from this idea of co-location to this idea of activation, the creation of knowledge quarters or the creation of innovation districts. And when we began to do a kind of critical analysis of the situation in Dublin at the moment, we saw some deficits that we felt could, if they were addressed, could really enhance the competitiveness of what we have. And the first deficit is this idea of the high density of business. So the location of startup and scale-up companies in this part of the city. And you really need these startup companies to drive the kind of innovation capability of a city. We're also missing the shared research infrastructure. So although we've got many globally leading tech companies in this part of the city, I think we're all aware that the level of research and innovation happening in these businesses in Dublin at the moment is less than we would like to see. And you see in many jurisdictions around the world that that kind of challenge of evolving the mandate of a business to be more research and innovation orientated becomes greatly enabled by putting in place shared research infrastructure. We're also missing the kind of public networking and open infrastructure that drives the kind of connectivity in the city. So although Grand Canal Quay has had a lot of development, a lot of it has been inwardly focused. So many of the large companies in this part of the city, employing thousands of people, have very little porosity of their staff back into the city. So again, in the case of, say, something like Google have about 8,000 staff, but those staff don't tend to leave the premises much during the day to connect with the entrepreneurs or the startups or the academics or the venture community, or indeed their peer groups in the other corporate companies. And that gets enabled by putting in place infrastructure that encourages and programs the infrastructure to encourage people to come out into the city. We're also missing the incubators and the accelerators that can house and scale and help scale companies more quickly. I suppose the one piece that's common in all global innovation districts is the presence of world-class universities. They provide that long-term mission alignment in this part for innovation districts. They provide the talent pipeline into those districts, and they provide the kind of long-term alignment of interest because they operate universities over decades or indeed longer, while most companies operate over obviously much shorter timeframes in terms of their strategic thinking. What Trinity has is this site, this 5.5 acre site, right in the center of Grand Canal, the Grand Canal Quay part of the city. So across the water from Google and the Boland's Mill developments, across Pierce Street from the Grand Canal Theatre. And the plan is to develop a 5.5 acre site into a new innovation campus for Trinity, and indeed to create room on that campus for other academic institutions, and to use that campus to act as a catalyst to create this innovation district for our city. So this is driven not just by the thinking we've been doing here locally, but really a lot of significant kind of trends internationally. So this idea is that innovation in the 21st century is different. So back in the maybe 70s and 80s, the way innovation was developed was people developed science parks out in the suburbs. People commuted out to those science parks, worked somewhat in isolation, and commuted back then to their homes where they lived. And to some extent, we saw this in Dublin, where we saw companies like Intel and IBM and HP all build very large campuses on that kind of 15-mile radius of the city, you know, on the M50 ring road, essentially. Today, innovation is different. It's driven really in urban environments. It's driven by this idea of critical mass, scale, density, proximity, bringing innovation actors together, and that proximity of those innovation actors driving and enhancing the innovation output from an environment. And the picture here on the right-hand side of this slide is Kendall Square, which is adjacent to MIT in Boston and quite proximate to Harvard. This is a picture of it back in the 70s. This is an updated image of it today, and probably seen as one of the global locations for innovation districts in the world, all driven by this idea of critical mass and density of innovation actors. And it's not just what's happening in, say, Kendall Square in Boston, but we're seeing in many cities around the world the same idea of millennials wanting to live and work in urban environments, driving significant investment in the city centers, driving the location of new innovation assets which are being used to catalyze and take advantage of this new location of industry in an urban environment. And so nearly every major US or European city has put in place some major strategy or investment in developing new innovation infrastructure to take advantage of this major trend. We don't have that in Ireland at the moment, but what we do have is plenty of information which says we've seen an irreversible shift in our economy. And so this is data from the Department of Enterprise, and what it shows is that firms who are investing in R&D are seeing significant economic growth across sales, export, employment, value of those jobs, salaries, while those firms that aren't investing in R&D are seeing a decline across all those same indicators. And so essentially Ireland has moved to having this innovation-enabled economy. And the real question is, how do we maintain that trajectory over the next couple of decades? And what kind of infrastructure do we put in place that begins to positively differentiate Dublin as our capital city in some regards in our capacity to compete for investment in this area? And so the site we've got in mind is to kind of respond to this both gap and opportunity is the site here. This is a kind of outline of the site. I think people may be familiar with it. It used to be an old IDA site. Trinity acquired it about 20 years ago, and it's essentially at the moment comprised of single or double story red brick buildings, essentially, with one building that is listed, which is the tower building. I don't know if my mouse hopefully can guide people through this, but that's the tower building. And just to give people a sense of location again, this is the Boland's Quay development happening here. This is the back of Google. This is the red carpet that's going into the Bord Gáis Theatre. And so what we want to do with this 5.5 acre site is to essentially transform it by building somewhere in the region of about 1.2 million square feet of new space. And I'll come back to that later when I discuss the master plan. And to fill that with 4 different components. So the first is to have world-class research at scale on the campus. So we would like to have the highest density of PIs on the island, co-located in something like 500,000 square feet of new research infrastructure on that campus. From Trinity's perspective, we're very much focused on using this to bring together our engineering, computer science and natural sciences capability. But we have also room within that to bring other research activity linked to the life sciences to bear. What's important about this campus is that from day one, we're developing this campus in mind to have the enterprise community co-locate on the site. And so there's 3 kinds of enterprise clients that we'd like to see on that site. The first is our intention is to build a large shared working space for startups. So about 10,000 meters squared of space that can house somewhere in the region of about 300 to 350 startup companies. And we're working with a US leader in that co-working space environment called CIC to look at how we might be able to deliver that space. The second kind of enterprise client we'd like to see would be new FDI companies landing into our ecosystem who typically land with about 15 to 25 people, and will see this as a landing zone for them as a way to connect quickly into the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem here within the city. And the third piece is that we would like to encourage the corporate innovation, corporate large FDI companies to place corporate innovation labs here onto the campus. So as many people will be aware, we've got many leading medtech, biopharma, ICT, born of internet companies functioning within this country with large manufacturing or services facilities. And we'd love to get them placing a research and innovation activity on the campus. The third piece is obviously this idea of programming and public space. So this is about creating a new placemaking within the city, a new campus that's going to be open to everybody to use, to take advantage of. Very much like the existing Trinity campus in College Green is one of the most visited locations in the city. We would like to see this new campus provide that new kind of center of mass and gravity to the Grand Canal Quay part of the city. And the final piece is that we want to see it act as a cultural connector. We want to see it bring a life and energy to that part of the city. We'd like to see vibrancy into the evening and at weekends, which will mean we'll put some accommodation on the site. We will look to put cultural activity on the site, and we'll look to use that culture to drive the kind of placemaking agenda within the campus. And so success has lots of different pieces, and this is a complicated site to maybe do over video, but you know, there's 3 components. The first is the city and the community. So in essence, it's about building this new international innovation brand for Dublin, this new urban quarter in our city. It's a large scale urban regeneration project. And in the end, we'd like to see it position Dublin as a top 20 global city for innovation. At the moment, we're not ranked in the top 50 globally. From a university perspective, it's about growing our relationship with industry, growing the level of graduates that are coming through. There is a demographic bubble coming through the system where we're going to have 25% more school leavers in in 2028 than we do have today. And so making the universities ready to take advantage of that demographic bubble will be really important. It's about growing our research income, growing our faculty, and in the end, trying to reverse the trend where a decade ago, Trinity would have been ranked as a top 50 global university. The economic crash here of the last decade has hugely impacted the competitiveness of higher education institutions in this country and indeed globally. And we would like to use this project as a means to reverse that trend. And obviously industry is about creating that critical mass of startup companies, a new FDI investment coming in, a new venture investment coming in, and creating that sense of place where we have thousands or hundreds of events and thousands of visitors coming in to understand the innovation capability of our capital city. And so we launched this as a vision about 18 months ago with the Taoiseach, and we've had really excellent support from the outgoing government, and obviously we have to wait to see what comes from the current government formation talks, but with every belief that we'll have the same level of support from the new incoming government. And so just to run through some of the things that we've been doing over the last 18 months to bring this project to life. So the first thing is we had a group that was set up by the Taoiseach, chaired by Martin Fraser, who's the Secretary General to the Department of the Taoiseach, very much using the same model that was used to establish the Financial Services Centre, or the IFSC. That group brought together Secretary Generals from the Departments of Education, Enterprise and Finance. It brought together the CEOs of key agencies like EI and the IDA, the CEO of Dublin City. It brought representatives from the local community, the leadership from some of the big multinational companies in the area like Google and LinkedIn, the presidents of the 4 Dublin universities, and indeed representatives from the venture community. And that group has been working over the last 18 months, I suppose, developing a roadmap for how this project may come to fruition. And they released brought a report to government that was accepted and approved by Cabinet and launched in early January this year. And that is available online to give people a kind of clear sense of what the vision is for this project and what the roadmap is for its delivery. We've been working across the higher education institutions, and we've got MOUs in place with all the Dublin universities and are now moving to see about building relationships with the regional universities around this project. We've been working with the local community and the local schools to create visibility of what we're trying to do with this project, and understanding that this project to work needs to connect in a really meaningful way with that community. We've obviously been doing a lot of consultation, meeting with industry, with government agencies, with the venture community, with the local community, etc. So we've had over 1,200 meetings over the last couple of years trying to build awareness and help people understand where they can fit into the vision that we're trying to create here for the city. One of the important things to keep in mind is that we roadmap to delivering on that 1.2 million square feet of new infrastructure is probably looking at a 5 to 10 year window from the beginning, completion of the first phase to the completion of the final phase. And so we're immediately beginning an early activation strategy on the site. I mentioned a minute ago, Trinity's recently acquired this warehouse here, which was one of the last pieces of the site that we didn't have control over. And the plan over the next number of months in 2020 and into early 2021 is to renovate that warehouse, to create a new public square, to connect it with the tower building and the back of the Lear, and to create an early activation zone on this site that we will begin to use to establish and trial many of the innovation-like activities we want to run on the campus at a larger scale when it's fully built out. So as we are going to market, completing the raising of the capital that we need to drive the development, appointing our development partner, we will be moving ahead with the early activation of the site and bringing the kind of energy and vibrancy we'd like to see at a larger scale there in the short term. And so hopefully that gives you a quick sense of what we're trying to achieve. We see this as a generational opportunity to do something very transformational to the city. That kind of thinking is driven by the idea that Trinity, or indeed any university developing a new campus within our city, is a once a 50-year or 100-year kind of occurrence. But also it's driven by the idea that in the last decade, we've seen this agglomeration of these wonderfully vibrant and innovative tech companies in that part of the city. And if we don't do something as a country to strategically embed them in that part of the city, what we'll find is that they dissipate over the next decade as quickly as they've come together. And suddenly the opportunity to build an innovation environment within Dublin that can be benchmarked or leading against the best cities internationally will dissipate with that. And so we have to take advantage of this opportunity now and build a strategic story, build new innovation infrastructure to embed the kind of corporate community that's there, and to add in the startup community and the academic community to really produce something that's world-class in our capital city. So hopefully that gives people a sense. Delighted to obviously take questions later on, Roger, from people. I should say it might be good if there's some questions now, but I have finished on time. I don't know if I have, because I'm not sure I'll be here at the very end of the meeting. But if people do want to have a conversation with me, please just email me. Delighted to respond and to talk to people at any time.
Okay, David, thank you very much indeed for a very interesting introduction to this morning's event. For those of you who's just joined us recently, you're watching the CETA Tech Trend webinar, and Dermot O'Brien was our first speaker as the Chief Innovation and Enterprise Officer in Trinity. If I could just add, because we have 1 or 2 minutes before we start the next one, just add my own personal note is that within Trinity itself, there's obviously been great excitement about this for a number of years. And you mentioned in what you were saying, Dermot, about the coming together of natural sciences, computer science, and computer engineering, and the engineering schools into what we've called the E3 development, engineering, energy, and the environment, and looking at synergistic ways in which we can collaborate further between the different areas. And this is highly relevant for us in CETA because the synergies between computer science and engineering in the development of, for example, BIM technology and for its rollout into the construction industry has been very important. So I don't see on my screen any questions for you at the moment, Dermot. I still have your slides, so maybe Shannon, if you could, are there any questions for me? Do you know, Shannon? I don't see any questions on the screen at the moment. So I'll take it there are
I don't see any at the moment either, Roger. Okay. Maybe they're waiting till the end.
Okay, so just to tell everybody again, please do keep your computers muted and also not to show video so that we can keep the bandwidth as clear as we possibly can, and it seems to be working very well at the moment. And to say that you can submit questions using the chat facility down the bottom, which is just shown on the screen there, and I will take those questions at the end and direct them to the individual speakers. So please do ask any questions. So before we move on to the next speaker, can I thank you very much indeed, Dermot, for a very interesting presentation. We're obviously, as things proceed over the next 5 to 10 years, I think there'll be many components in many universities and many industries which will be heavily involved in the development of this part of Dublin, and it's certainly a very exciting project.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you, everybody.
Our second speaker this morning is Osvaldo Sousa. He is the CEO of Kianda Technologies, and he's a tech entrepreneur in the streamlining collaboration area, which is an area that is obviously becoming very relevant to all of us as we work from home. Osvaldo brings 17 years experience in the IT industry with him, having spent the last 12 years working in Ireland. And he specializes in online forms and workflows for business processes and describes himself as a hands-on full stack software developer. This morning he's going to talk to us about digital construction apps to connect offline with site, empower staff, and increase compliance. So Shannon or Osvaldo, would you mind please getting your presentation up on the screen?
Certainly. Let me share my presentation now.
Good morning. You're very welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start the presentation and share. Okay, perfect. Good morning. As was said, I'm Osvaldo. I'm CEO of Canal Technologies. Look, before I start, I would like to thank everyone that is joining this morning. I mean, it's really good to be able to get out of the house without leaving the house. If you know what I mean, it's the ability for talking to other people. It's the ability to do something different. So,
Osvaldo, before you start, could I ask you just to expand that to the full screen, if you don't mind? You can leave it that way if you want, but do you want to expand it to the full screen?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So what I would like to do and is basically briefly explain what we do. So we provide a cloud-based platform that enables people to transform their work into digital apps quickly. So what is really unique about what we do is that non-technical people, I'm a full stack developer, as you mentioned before, but non-developers can go on and use their knowledge to proceed and build business processes and digitalize. So take those interactions and make them digital ones. And in times like this is even more important than before. So just to give you a quick overview of some of the companies that work with us, we have really well-known companies in working with us, like Mercury Engineering, AdMac, the May Group from Belgium, and a few others more. Those companies are on their own merits driving or leading digital transformation in their own industry, and they have deployed Kianda to help them with a few areas where digital process was very important to them. A few of the common processes that some of these companies are using at the moment include things like, for example, site inspections. So the ability to go into a site, fill in a checklist. Typically, some of the companies already had other systems, but they had a few difficulties with them. I'm talking about specifically site inspections, where they then were able to implement Kianda and make that a lot more efficient. Ability to work offline, ability to have high resolution pictures available to inspectors at later stage, and then to follow on with corrective action plans and incident reporting and many more. One thing that has become really important in the last while is ticketing, simple ticketing, even for ourselves, because at the moment we are all working remotely, so we are all working from home. So when I talk about ticketing, it's not just the typical IT ticketing, it's really the ability for you to have a remote way of managing work and making sure that work gets done. So if it is from a quality point of view, in our case, we have a ticket that we issued to quality engineers that they would be responsible for making sure that work gets done. And that's really important when we work remotely, because at this stage, what we really want to do is to make sure that work gets done. I know people are doing that work from home, but it's rule number one, get work done. And then additionally to that is over communicate. So this is a quick overview of what is the application or the platform about. So in this case, we have a desktop-based version where someone on site would go in, or someone on within the office would be able to track everything that's going on site. So when you go on site, you could have the tablet or iPad version where you have digital signatures immediately available, and when you fill in the questions and submit, that automatically generates a report, a notification for office-based personnel. It's also available as a pre-built app, meaning that you can start using it immediately with a few tweaks. And again, it's all available without the need of coding. So you can, without fear, start customizing and using it. So one of the reasons that Kianda is really being used is around continuous improvements, is the ability for anyone to go in and continuously improve that process. These things are never static. We would have multiple layers of improvement that happens over time. Automatic notifications are all built in within the platform. So, for example, whenever you are on site, you are automatically notified that you need to go do an inspection whenever that is scheduled. And the ability to digitally capture information and then also sign that information is also another very important part. And from an inspections and checklist point of view, is the ability for you to have almost an infinite type of flows that could happen. So whenever you go to a particular type of site, you would dynamically get questions and get those dynamic paths followed whenever you answer different questions. Another important feature for some of the companies we work with is the ability for you to work with large amount of images. So we understand that for us to effectively bridge the gap between office and site, there is a necessity for working with images. Images are things that well talk 1,000 words really, and the ability for us to provide the capability of image annotation gives site personnel the ability for them to quickly draw on images, bring attention to what needs action and so on. And ultimately, all of that saves time. So what I wanted to do more than just showing the slides, what I wanted to quickly do is also show a bit of what the application or the platform looks like. So this is an example of a dashboard for quality for construction, where you have a suite of applications available here. We have site inspections, where people would be able to go in and start new inspection, or even go in and consult with previous inspections that they have already completed. You can go here and visualize what was input into the previous questions. So there are questions that are dynamically loaded into the system, and we have the detail of the inspector that completed that inspection. Also, if I go back to the top, I can see that there are several images, and some of those images were annotated. And while the inspector was on site, and then from an approval point of view, on site, on the office site, we would be able to go in and say, okay, so let me review the automatically generated PDF that is again available to someone in the office. Then once you review all of that information that was automatically compiled by the system from doing the inspection on site, they would be going and taking the pictures. And once you are happy with that, you would be able to go in and say, yes, I approve, and then please proceed with closing this report. So once that is done, we can also again digitally sign the report and press approve. And that's really a quick snapshot of how the inspection work. Again, the same manner you would have the ability to work with maintenance or incident report, or even the corrective action plan. So in terms of incident report, there are several more layers on top of that that I would be happy to dive in a bit more if anyone wants to know a bit more about how it works. Additionally, as I was saying at the beginning, one thing that is really useful for us is the ability for you to have a simple ticketing system. Again, this is a system where someone could be looking for connectivity online, right? So this is something that someone maybe need new in a new site, for example. Once we have a very simple system where someone would be able to request assistance from a site or from even internally, and allow us to prioritize and get a list of actions that need to be completed, then it becomes a lot more easy for companies to keep a good track of the work that needs to be done. I will go back to my slides. Just to quickly close on what we want to. Okay, so. Okay, so a few important questions that we have, and I'm already preempting some of these questions, is does it work offline? Yes, it does. So the platform is configured to work in online and offline mode. So someone going to a site, obviously that site might not have connectivity or might not even have the ability to connectivity might not be there. So yes, the platform works offline. We work with a few companies, like for example, they have offshore vessels where sometimes there is no connectivity at all, and the system allows them to submit files or even fill in checklists while within the vessel. Where are the files uploaded going to be stored? You decide it, really. So we have a variety of connectors that could save your files within your own systems, within your file systems, within your SharePoint systems, you name it. Really, we are really providing an engine for you to streamline processes, and then you decide where you want to store those files. You can ultimately also choose to store it within our cloud. Is the platform secure? Is a very common question. So we have recently been awarded the ISO 27001, which is ISO for information security. So we take security very serious. We are regularly, there is an auditor coming in and ensuring that we are following best practices in terms of security. So it's not just us saying to you, we actually do take very seriously security. Other than that, it is important to know that we are based in Ireland. So we are based in TU Dublin. So we are located in the incubator of TU Dublin in Blanchardstown. We have a team of 7 members, and we are operating in the last 3 years. So I think this is is the end of my presentation. I look forward for your questions. Thank you.
Osvaldo, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. I think it would be hard to watch it and not envisage quite a number of applications for your services. For my own area, I'm thinking of damage assessment or condition surveys, looking at progress for interim certificates and snagging, all those things where you're reporting from site or either on a greenfield site or construction site where you want to record things that you need to bring back to the office to work further on. So thank you very much for your presentation, and I hope you'll be able to stay with us because we would want to take some questions at the end.
Thank you.
So now we'd like to move to the next presentation, and Ronan, if I could ask you please to put your presentation up if you wouldn't mind. And while you're doing that, I'll just remind everybody that we're listening to the CETA Tech Web webinar, and Roger West is my name, and I'm the chair for the session. And our third speaker is Ronan O'Boyle, and he is co-founder and director of Fixie 3D, which is a new architectural model making service using advanced 3D printing and workflows. And these are can be used in quite complex digital buildings models. Ronan is an architect by profession. He graduated from UCD and UCL, and he has extensive digitization experience in his early years with UK planning, but he now specializes in what's called immersive technology solutions. And quite an intriguing title to his talk, Making Digital Physical. So Ronan, I look forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Roger. Morning, everybody. So my name is Ronan O'Boyle. I'm the co-founder of Fixie 3D, and we are an architectural 3D printing company. What that means is that we are a model maker enabled by innovations in 3D printing and the advances of additive manufacturing. So what we do in our day-to-day is we take architects' digital design files and we make them 3D printable. This is a process called file fixing in the industry, and hence the name of Fixie. So as Roger said, we make the digital into the physical, and that's become quite relevant lately. You've seen the 3D printing industry respond to the challenges of COVID-19 by taking people's designs around the world and being able to help with the shortage of PPE and other health and safety equipment for hospitals. So we're also trying to contribute to that process. So it really means that if you can create a 3D model of something. If you can draw it, then you can make it into a physical reality. And so that's the amazing thing about 3D printing. For us, making the digital into the physical means taking your 3D designs that you work on every day in your normal workflows as an architect. So that's multiple file formats, multiple styles of drawing and modeling, and we can then make them 3D printable. So 3D printable means meeting your complex brief to create physical models in different technologies and a combination of technologies, really trying to communicate the essence of your design and make sure that it gets de-risks the design process or proceeds fluently through to the next stage. So for non-architects, or well, I'll just explain a little bit about our history. So we started last year in London and recently opened an office in Dublin. We're already working consistently with some of the leading architectural firms in the world, either directly with architectural teams or with their in-house model makers, or more recently, architectural firms actually have in-house rapid prototyping teams. So they would have 3D printers themselves, and they would use us for outsourcing or for that process of file fixing, which I mentioned earlier. So architects would understand the relevance and place of models within the design process of physical models, but perhaps not everybody still sees their relevance. So I just wanted to kind of explain their role within the development cycle. Obviously, early stages, people use them for sketch and concept design, and then iterating them through design development. You can use them for planning to help communicate to lay people or to people not involved with the project, how your project impacts the surroundings in competition bids. We often get models commissioned for that, and that's obviously a risk for the client, because they don't know if they're going to win that project. So the model is really a showstopper and something that helps them get through that process. Design development externally with your client as the design is more developed, how you can really get it over the line. And then public consultation or master planning, perhaps like Diarmuid was talking about earlier, when that project goes through the later stages of planning and development, they need to engage with the local community, make sure that they understand it. And that's very relevant to having larger models in place on site. And sales and marketing as well. I'm sure most people have seen these in housing developments and marketing suites, where they have the whole interactive range of lighting and apartment finder systems and things like this. So just to show you how these might appear. So from the sketch diagram models through to multiple iterations of the same design, through to seeing how models appear within their context, or how you envision completing a particular design problem, right through to your sales and marketing models at the end, where you show how it might be like to actually live within that development to try and actually sell the property. So our kind of main models would be these site models, which would be these would be context models, where you take the data of the 3D data of the surrounding context, and your proposal site will be removable so that you can reuse that model for multiple design stages. Floor layouts, which is essentially an extruded floor plan that might want to show the furniture, the material layouts of the design that you've chosen. Sectional models, if there's an interior space that is really key to the design. Interactive models, where maybe you want to take them apart and show the interior, but in a different way. Interactive models can also mean when you have augmented reality overlays, and I'll discuss that later on as well. And then construction models, where you can actually, you might have seen 4D animations, those which show you through the phases of construction. You can also do that with models where you essentially would build them in a meeting. to show how the construction phasing would occur. So to talk a little bit about model making in general, since we've been designing buildings, we've been using models to test out our designs before actually going on to construction, but that whole model making process hasn't really evolved that much since we started doing that. The newest inventions in the model making process are laser cutting and CNC milling, and these are still very labor intensive processes. And just to compare maybe the traditional to the digital to the new process of model making, to kind of communicate how not much has changed within the process until 3D printing came along. So the traditional process is that architect designs, provides manual or 2D drawings, and then the model maker would take those 2D information to create a 3D representation, build a model. The digital process, the architect still designs, but now more in 3D drafting. They would supply a full set of 2D drawings or the 3D model to the model maker, but the model maker then takes the 3D information, makes it 2D to then create a 3D representation. So it's almost a step backwards in the digital process, how model makers, traditional model makers have absorbed these new technologies. So with us, with 3D printing, the new process is the architect still designs through 3D drafting, but we try and skip the labor intensive processes by allowing the technology to advance and create efficiency. So you go from 3D drafting to 3D printed model. But of course, with any new process, there is obstacles, and we have really set up our company around that obstacle, which is of file fixing, of creating a 3D printable file from an architect's design model. So there are a few reasons why an architect's model is not 3D printable, largely because they're never designed for 3D printing in the first place. It's a model built for one-to-one construction. This also means that when you're printing a model at a reduced scale, any errors or mistakes will be increased, and the reduced scale of the file means that lots of the detail that was in the model might disappear as well. So it's often a process of understanding what needs to be communicated in the model as well. Almost always the models are sketches. They will be drafts, so that we need to understand whether this is the final information, and that also means that there might be gaps in the information as well. So, and each architect will also have a complex, specific brief as well. Some things they really want to show and some things that they don't want to be visible at all. So it's understanding that there's a human eye involved as well. So we're still a fair bit off being able to directly print from our design software, unfortunately, but we're starting that process of streamlining the fixing process, the file preparation process, so that we can deliver wider adoption of 3D printing for architectural models. To understand why it's not an easy process, it's important to look at the file format of 3D printed models. So STL is short for stereolithography, which is the initial form of 3D printing. Another way to look at that is through standard triangle language, because the geometry in an STL is made up of triangles. So it's the whole mesh will be covered in triangles like this. The 3D printer will read an outer face and an inner face. This is to know where to print and where not to print. That may seem like it makes sense, but when you look at a specific project, this would be how it might appear as an external mesh. Then you look inside and you see the internal faces as well. But then that would be, this volume you see here would be printed as a whole. And we often try and reduce the material so that is printed. So we would hollow that object, but that would end up leaving some material inside the object. So we have to and make sure that there's an area for that unused, uncured material to escape from the model. So these are the problems we face without any issues in the actual model, but there's lots of issues that we could face. That there could be holes in that mesh. There could be the triangles could be facing the wrong way. So we're getting into quite a lot of detail here into the process. There could be some of the triangles could not be stitched, might not be stitched together properly. So there's lots of issues that can come up within a model that we have to, through our processes, either we have a software that helps us automatically do some of these, but lots of the work is still manual in this fixing process. How this looks in an architectural software, it can be quite scary when you open it up sometimes. All the yellow lines are errors along with the red. On a closer look at that, you can see there's internal information that will need to be removed, and we'll need to look at all of those errors before the 3D printer will read the files and be able to print them. File fixing involves a number of different processes as well. Specific to each type of 3D printing, we might need to thicken up elements so that they survive the printing process and post-processing. And you have to limit yourself to the constraints of the 3D printer as well. From the client's point of view, we often get files with lots of unnecessary information, so we ask them to delete that. That could be thousands of door handles that will never be printed in a model, for example. We ask them to reduce the scale to what they want printed, so we know how big the models are, what the constraints they meet. And then also, rather than providing a full city model, we ask them to reduce or mark the extents of the model.
Just to say, Ronan, you've 2 minutes left.
Great. So the process for us is uploading your model and providing a brief. We get approval at each stage, file fixing, and then right through to printing and delivery. I'll just go through these because I want to get to one video. These are all the formats that we can receive files in: FBX, OBJ, 3DM, SketchUp, and STL. So most softwares export in those formats. We have industrial scale 3D printers on site. That's an 800mm by 800mm build volume. I'll show you a quick video of this producing printed parts. So this is how they will emerge out of the 3D printer at the end. So in this specific technology, they will be semi-transparent parts, and they need to be finished after that. And then this is an older form of technology that has a more limited build volume. So you'd often have to create multiple parts and fit them together. Some examples of what we've printed. This was one of the very first models we did, but you can see that it prints in full color. We often get figurines as well, so non-architectural models, and we did some nutcrackers in this technology at Christmas time for 12 Days of Christmas. But this is our newest technology. It's a HP machine, and it's used for manufacturing of multiple parts. So we're adapting it to architectural workflows, and this is going to be used for the 3D printing of the face shields, etc., that I talked about earlier for the COVID-19 response. Some models that we've produced with this, it's a much more robust material and technology, and can also print in color as well. We still do use traditional model making, but we allow 3D printing to do the bulk of the work. So traditional model making finishing would be added at the end, just to bring a little more life to the 3D print as per the client's brief. So this is the kind of range of models that we can produce with our model making partners, and all the kind of bells and whistles that are still possible, but using 3D printing as the driver of efficiency. Quick note on our plans to expand is that our model allows us to reduce costs for model making or architectural models, so increases our market, but also allows other 3D printing bureaus and architectural model makers to access 3D printing, because we allow them to increase their capacity by file fixing for them. So we have set up in Dublin and London, and our expansion is going to be a city-based model depending on where the development is. And we have two major products under development at the moment that are obstacles to our scaling or the scaling of these processes. One is auto quoting, and the other is a live project tracker for our clients to offer transparency in the process. We have a Irish-based visualization partner, 3D Design Bureau, so we offer the full package with them in communications, an immersive partner, Soluis in the UK, and I'll just finish by showing an image. This is our model of Piccadilly Circus, and it's the augmented reality overlay by our immersive partner Soluis, so they can use the model as a blank canvas to track and add this information. So they can go so far as to actually add materials onto the buildings and then jump into interior 360s as well. So that's all the kind of opportunities that come through. This was a recent model, 1.5 meter long map of the UK that was put on hold, unfortunately, but this was going to be a tracking on each of the major landmarks of the UK as well. So that'll be interesting to pick up when everything proceeds as normal afterwards as well. We do have plans with our data partner AccuCities to roll out a 3D printed model of Dublin that's updatable, that can be used as a planning tool for public consultation, and where 3D printing and augmented reality are combined to communicate the development proposals to the public as well. So thank you.
Okay, Ronan, thank you very much. I'm sorry you were rushed towards the end. Certainly there were some very interesting examples there. There are a couple of questions coming in, so I'm going to hold off on the questions until we get to the end where we have a Q&A session. So you're all very welcome to add questions. Our last speaker of the four is Patrick Liddy. He's the Customer Services Manager with Utility AR. So we're going to expand extensively on that theme of augmented reality now with the next talk. Patrick is an electrical engineer by background. He qualified from UCD and DIT. His background is very much in innovating to lead towards successful energy efficiency software platforms. That's his background. And he recently, or relatively recently, entered the augmented reality market as an entrepreneur, and his company has both local and multinational clients working in the AR space. And his talk this morning is going to be entitled Helping Connect with Workers Who Are Unable to Come on Site. Patrick.
Great, thanks a lot. Ronan, do you mind stopping sharing your screen? Thanks a lot. Great. Just give me one moment for the technical part. Great, I hope you're all, you can all see what I'm presenting now. So my name is Patrick Liddy, and I'm going to talk to you about augmented reality and smart glasses, how they're being used in data centers, in industry, the construction industry, utilities, all sorts of areas. And I'm going to focus very much on practical applications that you can use today to help your site be more efficient. And I suppose something that I plan to seed in all of your brains for a moment is the key thing that we're getting an awful lot of activity around as well at the moment is reducing the need for access to sites and reducing the need for international travel. That's a major part of what we do, and it's very much the focus at the moment, as you can understand. So, what are augmented reality glasses? Well, I'm wearing a pair of smart glasses here on my head. I'll explain that in a moment. But if you want to look at the slide, I suppose the core and critical two features that these things have is they, generally speaking, have a forward-facing camera. And that means that they understand where they are in the world. And using that understanding, they can project relevant information into the vision of the wearer. So on the image on the slide, you can see a pair of transparent glasses that look like safety glasses. However, information can be projected on the glass. So what I'd say to you is, if you can imagine when you leave the newspaper on the dashboard of your car, and you can see the newsprint on the windscreen, well, augmented reality glasses in that scenario have a very similar effect, whereby you are seeing information as well as seeing the real world. With these ones that I'm wearing here, this is a little computer screen here in front of my eye, and I can push it out of the way, or I can bring it up close. And I know it sounds a bit mad, but I assure you it actually works quite well when you get used to it. So it means that I can see information here, digital information, but I can also see all you. Well, I can't see you, but I can see the screen, and I can see the world around me. So how do we use these things? Well, just to say for a moment, there's not just me who is talking quite a bit about this technology. So if you Google augmented reality, you will find a tremendous amount of news stories about this this technology. How it's going to change how we work with computers in every way, but starting with how we work with computers. So I suppose the first big and exciting use case for this technology is working, excuse me, with the people who are undigitized at the moment, with workers who work with their hands, because this is a better form factor. While I am wearing this headset and I can see the world, I also have my hands free to do whatever I need to. And many of the headsets, including this one, is voice activated. So I can tell it what information I need, or simply by using the forward-facing camera, it can see what I'm looking at and show me the relevant information. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about design. So you're going to have to bear with me for just one moment. Now, hopefully you can all see a YouTube video, and I'll share all the content later if you want to have a look further at this. But this is an example of augmented reality being used in design. So here we have a glasses wearer, and you're seeing what they're seeing. They're seeing a virtual overlay of BIM information, of services in a shell and core building. So that allows them to visualize and understand where everything is going to be, and identify clashes or any other issues that might come up. Or where you want to understand what would a building look like in a open plan versus an office versus various different modes that you might lay it out in. You can create similar overlays and allow you to see virtually what it would look like. Another way this is being used, and this can be used immediately, is very similar to what Osvaldo spoke about earlier. So this is where you wear these glasses and they recognize an asset. Now, recognizing an asset for a computer can be that they have image recognition, or it can be much simpler where there's just a QR code or a barcode or even a registration number stenciled on an asset, and they will be able to recognize it. And when they recognize it, then they can show you relevant information. So that might be validating that you're looking at the correct piece of equipment, or giving you general information about when it was installed, what stage it's at in the commissioning, or step-by-step procedures on how you should move forward with this particular asset. So again, I'm going to lean on YouTube for further information for you. So here we see a technician wearing glasses. He sees this valve, and information about the valve is presented in his vision. Or here, this technician sees this mast, and again, what's happening is the glasses are calling upon a database such as the one Osvaldo spoke about, and bringing that vision or that information into the vision of the glasses wearer. Here we see a technician following a step-by-step procedure on how to do a particular task, or he's being shown drawings or other critical information about an asset based upon looking at it. Here we can see him viewing a how to set up this electrical meter. Or if I just skip ahead for a moment. Here we see him viewing a how to use this electrical breaker, and he's consuming a short little video on how to do it while he's actually at the asset. So what this allows him to do is to get much more sensible guidance on how to do things. If he were to sit at his desk and watch a video or read the manual and then go to the asset and try and do it, the accuracy or the likelihood that he will follow the procedure in detail is worse. An example of a company using this is CIX Data Center in Cork. So they're using this technology for their step-by-step or their daily walkthroughs for their new assets. As they come in, they can scan them and see if they are as they expect it to be. And they're also using remote advisor video calling. So let me just talk about that then again. So the technology that's really, really relevant in this week, or in fact in this month, is remote advisor video calling. So you'll have to excuse me. What that technology allows is a glasses wearer to look at an asset, and then the video camera can have a video call going with a colleague who is elsewhere in the world. That could be in another part of the site, that could be at home where they're unable to come to site, or it could be anywhere in the world where they are just the expert on that particular piece of equipment. So what you're allowing using this technology is the local qualified individual to get the most experienced person to look over their shoulder and talk them through how to fix whatever problem they encounter. So again, let me show you a short video of that happening so you can get a better idea. So here we've got an on-site service technician. His advisor is off-site, maybe back in the HQ, and that advisor is able to draw annotations on the vision of the glasses wearer to talk him through how to do what he wants him to do next. So you can see again, using his computer, or indeed it could be his phone or a tablet or any of the sorts of technologies that we're all used to using this type of thing on. The advisor remotely can see and draw and speak to the guy and draw annotations. So really what this technology is doing is it's taking Zoom, which we're using right now, but it's more appropriate and specifically designed for the use case of technical people using on-site. An example of a company using this is CDM Smith. So they're environmental consultants. They do a lot of work around new bills and looking at surveys appropriate around those new bills. And very often with projects they're doing, they require international expertise. So they have, I think, 5,000 staff around the world, some who are very, very specialized in particular issues that might come up. And this allows them to, at a much reduced cost, bring that expertise on site with them at all times, reducing the need for travel, saving them a lot of money, saving them a lot of time. At this moment, it just would not be possible to bring those people. And the truth is, I'm not sure in the world going forward how easy it will be. It will be a bigger ask to ask someone to travel than it has been in the past. Just to speak about ourselves for just a moment. So we are a full service offering around these types of technologies, augmented reality. And what I mean by that is we will work with your company to figure out where are the opportunities for you to apply this type of technology, and indeed what technologies it should interact with. Because all this really is a different interface. The database solutions, so for example, what Osvaldo spoke about, you still want to focus on those things. And all this is a new interface, which is appropriate for workers who work on site to access that information. We'll help you procure the information or procure the equipment, set it all up, interact with your existing databases if required, or maybe it's just a siloed thing separate from your main system. Manage the project end to end and help you integrate this into your business. So train your people, go on the road with your people, get them using the technology so it's not going to gather dust. And that's all there is from me. Thank you very, very much.
Patrick, thank you very much indeed for a talk which is very much asking us to use our imagination as to how these things might be applied in our everyday life. And again, as with the previous speaker, it wasn't hard for me to imagine cases where this technology would be very useful. For example, if you have an iPad or a tablet out on site and the person who's using it is inexperienced, then if you have one of your augmented reality glasses, you would be able to see what they see and give them instructions as to how to operate it. And in my own sphere, teaching students how to use BIM is normally you have to go around from screen to screen, or you don't know quite what they're looking at when they have an inquiry, and you'll be able to see exactly what they see on their screen as distinct from what they should see, and therefore you can give them a better instruction. So I can see lots of really super potential applications for this. And thank you for finishing on time. So what I'm going to do now is we've had our 4 speakers, and in case I forget later on, can I thank each and every one of you very much indeed for what has been a fascinating hour and a half or so listening to different areas in which information technology can be applied in the construction industry. And we have 3 questions, and indeed I have a couple of questions myself which I may or may not ask depending on time. But if I may, could I just start with the first question? This question is from Alan Hoare. Yeah, Alan Hoare for Osvaldo. How does Kianda integrate with the existing ERP systems in place? So, Osvaldo, are you there? Could you unmute, please? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the question, just to say it again, is how does Kianda integrate with existing ERP systems in place?
So Kianda comes with several connectors for ERPs. So I can quickly, even more than, as I say, show me rather than just, if you can stop sharing your screen, Patrick, please. So I can quickly give you a quick glimpse of what it looks like. So from a connectors point of view, we have connectors to email, to SharePoint, to many different types of backend systems that would allow you to connect, for example, to an SAP system or to an Oracle system and streamline your process, or you can have this application very quickly built so that we are going to be able to capture the data and at the same time connect back to your existing ERP systems.
Okay, thank you. I'll just go back. Thank you for that. I think you answered that question. We don't need to take it any further. I have a question from John Devery, and I'll read the question out. Says it's for to everyone, but maybe one of you could decide who's going to take this question. Is IFC file format supported? And is this the interoperable file format for BIM modeling software? Using IFC could make file fixing easier by utilizing programs such as Solibri Model, Checker, or Autodesk Navisworks, etc. Does anyone want to take that question?
I will, Roger. I think this is relating to file fixing of files for a 3D print. So IFC files, I guess the answer to this question is how much intelligence do you need in a 3D printed file? And the answer is very little. So IFC files contain a lot of information that is irrelevant, and they have also been developed for a different purpose. So IFC files are currently not directly 3D printable, but any BIM software will be able to export the formats that I suggested earlier, the OBJs, FBXs, and the like. So I think there is some work to be done to maybe integrate the 3D printing workflows directly into softwares like Revit, for example, so that there is checks in place as you progress with your model that it could be 3D printable. And the products we're developing are outside of these softwares because we don't want to be tied to any specific software, want to be software agnostic, but it's definitely a challenge to keep within the BIM workflow, and we want to stay as close to that as possible.
Okay, Ronan, thank you. John, if you have any further follow-up questions on that, you just use the chat for that. I'll keep an eye out for anything else you want to ask as a follow-on. Yeah, so there is specifically a question. IFC is software agnostic within the BIM modeling sphere. I don't think that's a question. Is that a statement? IFC is software agnostic within the BIM modeling sphere.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm saying that IFC have too much information for what is needed within 3D printing. Even if you're talking about Solibri, Model Checker, etc., and Navisworks, from my experience, they're used more for MEP and structural checking and that kind of information. When you're looking at a model at 1 to 500, 1 to 200 scale, that information isn't even needed sometimes. So it's about thinking about what is needed for 3D printing, and IFC files are just at the moment too large and too cumbersome for the softwares that are being used for 3D printing.
Yeah, I know there is other software suppliers are working on how to extract the relevant bits out of BIM, because there's an awful lot of information in there, so that you just get the bits that you want.
I think BIM will be helpful in the future of 3D printing of architectural models, because it has built an intelligence in there about components, for example, and that can be used, but I think it will take a lot of research to get to that stage.
So for the moment, the detailer refines the design for printing.
Exactly, and then we make it 3D printable.
Good. Okay. If I may, I'll move on to another question. A question for Patrick. Patrick, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. The comment is from John Duffy, and he says that utility error looks like a great aspect for asset maintainers, and he works in the area of maintaining the Lewis, working for the TII, and he wondered whether or not you had any other providers from the railway maintenance area.
The answer is no. We have spoken to some in the UK. I think that, so I suppose to speak about innovation and how we have observed things, I think that we all work for very busy businesses, and we've spoken to several utility and on-the-road maintenance organizations about using our solution to make their lives easier. And we get a 100% response that that's a great idea and they really want to do it. The challenge is all the other innovations. So all the speakers here today have spoken about great innovations that are going on. And I'm sure many of you are thinking, oh, I need to talk to this person and that person and the other person. But the challenge is to have the time to focus on all those things. So we've spoken to other train maintenance companies in the UK. We haven't got to a point of progressing yet, but the conversations are still ongoing. What I think is happening now with the world is we are seeing with other companies we're working with, some of the aspects of our software or our innovation are suddenly very much of the moment. And people who said they would get back to us in 9 or 10 months are getting back to us now. So I'm sorry, that was a long answer to a short question, but there you go.
Yeah, no, because that was interesting, because it does raise some questions. I think more than ever before, certain pieces of technology die after a while, but what we've been listening to this morning is, and we've all done it, I've done it myself, is we can think of applications where the technology would be useful. And as you correctly say, it's not just time, but it's the investment in the innovation. in order to develop the app or the technology to be used in a particular scenario. And more than ever before, we're seeing lots and lots of applications for this new technology where either computer scientists or the engineers or the entrepreneurs are going to develop things that in 10 years from now we'll wonder how we ever did without it. And this is truer now than it's ever been before. If you look at other areas such as laser scanning, drones, etc., 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 there's just incredible scope for applications. And this morning we've seen 3 of the 4 speakers have given us opportunities to think about how we might be able to use this technology ourselves. I don't have any other waiting chats, but if I may, I've just asked one question and maybe ask for a quick response from each person. And these were questions that occurred to me as you were talking, but they may be questions that are a little bit more difficult to answer. The first one, maybe for Osvaldo, is I didn't quite get whether or not the product you were talking about, whether or not the app is bespoke, or whether or not people can create their own dashboards, because obviously it's much better to be able to create your own dashboard. Otherwise, you have to actually get yourselves to actually develop the app for you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely yes or absolutely no?
Absolutely yes. So this is really one of the core tenets of what Kianda is doing. So it's allowing yourself to build those dashboards. So it's all drag and drop, no code requiring. So from building the forms, drag and drop, to actually assemble the dashboards themselves, you can do that all of that themselves. Actually, this is one of the key things that we do with the customers. So what we typically do for large customers, we go in, we provide the platform and a bit of training, and after a while they run on to build themselves their process. So we have a large customer in Portugal where they started last year with one process, and right now they have more than 45 processes being used in the company. Okay,
that's very good news for the user to be able to adapt that themselves. If I may, again, just two remaining quick questions. Ronan, if I could ask you a quick question. We've been looking recently at value added for clients in respect of using BIM to level 2, and we're getting some conflicting answers to that. With regard to 3D model building, without being explicit about the cost, because there's a lot of time involved in developing some of the models that you showed us, which looked very impressive. But what's the value added to the client? Is it cheaper than the traditional way of building a model manually by hand?
Yeah, so there's a few value adds. Definitely works out cheaper. It's more time efficient as well, so you can turn around models quite quickly with a high level of detail. And yeah, the other point is that you can, through the printing technologies, retain a lot of that detail that would take weeks to be done by hand.
Okay, so it's certainly faster, and there's more value added to the client, because that's an important question.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
thank you. And then finally, Patrick, if I may, just a very simple question. As a person who wears glasses, are the lenses in the AR, can they be prescriptive lenses?
Yes, is the short answer. Yeah.
Okay, well, we couldn't get any shorter than that. So at this point, we're coming to the end of our tech event. And as I thank all of the speakers and thank all of you for attending, we had a maximum of 45 people I seem to see attending, which is a fantastic turnout, and I hope everybody got something to take away from it. But before we finish, could I just ask Alan, are you there?
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Alan, could I ask you just to turn your screen? That's it. Turn your screen around so we can see your face, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, can you see me now?
Just a little bit more. Yep. That's it. Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending and hand over to Alan to make some closing remarks.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. As Roger said, we had 45, I think, at one stage this morning, which is a fantastic turnout. Also, thank you, Roger, for your role as chair this morning. You gave a masterclass. So if you're available for any other meetings, you might let us know. To Diarmuid, he mentioned this morning strange times, and it is, and for many of us, it's a concerning time. But I think business continuity is critically important to CETA and its members. I hope that CETA this morning did connect you to innovation, as that is what we're trying to do, and we have been trying to do for the past couple of decades. I want to also thank Bank of Ireland, our partners. Whilst we're not with you this morning in Grand Canal, we know that you're with us and behind us and supporting us in our digital trend program. To the CETA team, for putting a great, for all the support behind the scene. To Shannon, you did a super job this morning. Thank you so much. And to Suzanne and Elenia, and to Sam for all the great work you're doing over the last few weeks to keep the lights on. And to our sponsors, to Diatech, to DCT, to Celebri, I3PT, and CSIS for staying with us and supporting us on this program. I suppose to our speakers this morning, I learned so much this morning about 3D printing and about AR and how it can be used. I think Diarmuid did a fantastic job in laying out, I suppose, the exciting plans for GCID. And we're really looking forward to staying connected with Diarmuid and his team into the future. I think CETA has probably a role to play and an opportunity to connect into that wider ecosystem of innovation that Diarmuid spoke about. To Osvaldo, again, it's the devil is in the detail. I think when you answered that question on interoperability, you really nailed it. I could see huge amount of work has gone in behind this product, and I wish you every success with it into the future. Ronan, I learned so much this morning about 3D printing. I didn't realize it was so, I suppose, advanced, again, looking forward to seeing. I hope that project in the UK and many other projects in Ireland will come to fruition for you. And again, to Patrick, again, you know, the way you're able to show in real time how experts can assist people in the field is really transformational. And so again, and I think there may well be the fact that you're also providing training and support is important. So all in all, a super meeting. Really inspiring messages from everyone. Can I just, on behalf of myself personally and to all our members and from the team, to wish you all and yours all good health and well-being at this challenging time. We have a number of other meetings planned. We have a meeting tomorrow, a regional meeting. Again, we're talking about 50, 60 people online. We're also putting our plans for the third installment of the digital transformation event that was so well supported in the past few months in Dublin City Council offices. The message for the 22nd of April is, I suppose, the power of modularization to respond to change. And of course, some of you spoke this morning about how you're adapting to these difficult, challenging times. And we're going to hear, we should be announcing the program later this week. And we'll have speakers right across Europe presenting, and hopefully be a very exciting event. I hope you continue to support us. So good speed, good health to all of you. And thank you again, Roger, for the really excellent job you did this morning.